Welcome to Chicago. Yes. So warm welcomes to all of you. My name is Mary Delansky, and I'm the director of the QSEN Institute. And on behalf of the QSEN Institute, I would like to welcome you to the 2017 QSEN International Forum, Going the Magnificent Mile with QSEN Competencies. Yay! This year, we are celebrating the expansion of QSEN to 3 regional centers at Jacksonville University, directed by Dr. Sherry Cheneau, and the College of New Jersey, directed by Jerry Altmiller, and then the University of North Carolina, directed by Dr. Gwen Sherwood and Dr. Carol Durham. Yes, and we're very proud and honored to expand to really hit and meet more regional outreach for the work that we do here in spreading quality and safety competencies and moving the QSEN mission forward. So 2017 marks the 12th anniversary of the QSEN initiative and our QSEN community, and also the 40th anniversary of the Star Wars movies. Yeah, I am a Star Wars fan because of my children, and I want to say the Force is with us. We QSENistas are here and inspire nursing students, nurses in our field, and other healthcare professionals to not just do our work, but to improve our work. Our force is improving the care of our patients and their families. And our impact is incredible. So here's to all of you. And the attendance today at the 2017 conference is really testimony to QSEN's progress and includes students and nurses from academia, from practice, and from 36 states in our nation. And we also welcome our international QSENistas from Brazil, South Korea, and Canada. So welcome to our international guests. So we have about 360 attendees here with us today, and we have about 150 new attendees. And you can see on your ID where if it's a rainbow, then you're a new attendee. And I just would ask all of our QSENistas, if you see someone new, to really shepherd them in and greet them warmly. And I also want to welcome our VA colleagues. We have about 25 people from the VA system here, including our VA Quality Scholars program. So welcome to our VA colleagues. I also want to thank our sponsors, who really deserve special recognition and are highlighted on our housekeeping slides, as you'll see going out through the conference. And really join me in thanking our signature sponsor, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, AHRQ, for supporting this conference that focuses on learning implementation strategies to integrate the QSEN competencies into both academia and practice. And please stop by all the exhibits outside and share your experiences so that we can continue to spread our QSEN mission. One note of housekeeping though, please complete the short survey that's in your bag as a pre-survey today, and then at the end of the conference as a post-survey, because we really want to capture how much learning has occurred here, particularly related to implementation methods and strategies. And I also want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your really busy lives to attend the conference this week. Being here today is a statement of your professionalism and passion to improve the quality and safety of healthcare. And as we engage in the next 2 days, our goal is for you to channel, nurture, and expand your energy to go forth and do great things, and identify the many opportunities for you to get involved, to join a task force, to submit a teaching strategy, or to just maybe write a manuscript or a publication related to quality and safety. And we really have set up the conference to harmonize this academic clinical practice partnership so that we can work together on this important mission of improving the quality and safety of healthcare. And now I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Jerry Altmiller. She was our 2016 Linda Cronenwet Leadership Award winner. And Jerry embodies the wise words of Yoda from Star Wars. Yoda said, "Do or do not. There is no try." And Jerry is a doer. she doesn't try. And she has accomplished so many things this past year. She's been the chief editor on a special issue for the journal Nurse Educator that is completely focused on QSEN. And she also has taken the leadership role in as a QSEN regional director. And so with that, Jerry's here to just tell us a little bit about her research that also she's taken up this year.
Thank you. Thank you. So welcome everyone, glad to have you here. We have had a busy year doing QSEN work, but today I would like to talk to you about two projects in particular undertaken by the QSEN Institute. This year, QSEN partnered with the highly respected journal Nurse Educator, resulting in a supplement for the journal that is wholly focused on quality and safety education for nurses. The QSEN supplement will have 11 articles by authors who were recruited to share their work, which included strategies for implementing QSEN into student learning, studies related to QSEN in academia, information about implementation science as a way to spread QSEN, and examples of academic practice partnerships and the importance they have in moving QSEN and nursing forward. We are very excited about that work, and we look forward to it being published in September and hope that you will all look for it also. The second project that I want to share will be published in the QSEN supplement of Nurse Educator. It's the results of the National QSEN Faculty Survey conducted by Gail Armstrong and myself this last year. We were looking to assess the state of QSEN in academia since the introduction of QSEN 12 years ago. The study was done in partnership with the National League for Nursing, and we looked to assess whether QSEN competencies were being taught in U.S. schools of nursing, the degree of faculty development in schools where QSEN was being taught, and the degree of integration into the curricula where QSEN competencies were being taught. 2,037 nursing faculty from across the nation participated in the study. Participants were mostly full-time and represented all program types. What was found was that the integration of QSEN is being done at most schools to some degree, but the implementation is segmental, meaning that it is in some courses but not in others. What was most telling was the degree of faculty knowledge regarding QSEN. Only a small percentage identified that they have received formal education about QSEN and felt well-versed in the competencies. A much larger percentage, almost 80%, of participants identified that the faculty in their program did not receive formal faculty development regarding QSEN and had to learn about QSEN through self-study or other modalities. 133 participants did not know what quality and safety education for nurses is. So a common gap that Gail and I found is that evaluation of student achievement in the QSEN competencies is lacking in many programs. Significant barriers for faculty are there also regarding the integration of QSEN competencies, and they include a lack of time to do this work and the need for ideas and training in how to use it effectively and how to integrate QSEN across the curriculum. So what does all this mean? It means there is a lot of work for us to do. Some of that work will be integrating QSEN competencies into courses where it is not well represented, like community-based care courses and nursing research. The competencies of quality improvement and informatics need greater representation in nursing curricula. And very important to this entire process is that faculty need support and education to do this work. So today we invite you to move forward with us to expand QSEN scholarship and resources. Coordination of the work is going to be key in continuing to integrate QSEN competencies into academia and practice. We hope that you will connect with the QSEN Institute individually or through your professional organizations, that you will share your resources with the healthcare community, and that you will share your ideas and energy to move the agenda of quality and safety forward in both academia and practice. Thank you very much for being here today. We hope that you enjoy the conference and that it inspires and motivates you in your own quality and safety work. Thank you.
Just a small token of appreciation for all her hard work. So
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Dr. Altmiller. I think her results highlight why we're here today, and that's to learn innovative strategies to facilitate this implementation of quality and safety competencies for both, in our curriculums and in our practice. And so thanks again to you and Dr. Gail Armstrong for these important contributions. And now I'm going to have Barb Tassel come up, and she's going to introduce our very first speaker. So thank you again and welcome. Really looking forward to spending time with you in the next 2 days.
Good afternoon. I am Barb Tassel, and I'm a member of the Planning Committee and Administrative Director at the ProMedica Center of Nursing Excellence in Toledo, Ohio. I have the pleasure of introducing our opening session presenter today, Dr. Jane Barnsteiner. And Dr. Barnsteiner is the Professor Emerita at the University of Pennsylvania in the School of Nursing and editor also for the Translational Research and Quality Improvement for the American Journal of Nursing. She is internationally recognized as a leader in quality, safety, and evidence-based practice. Jane was one of the developers of QSEN initiative and is co-editor of the text Quality and Safety in Nursing. And that's a competency-based approach to improving outcomes. It's now in its second edition. So be sure to visit Dr. Barnsteiner tonight at the poster reception to have her sign your brand new copy, that new edition that's out. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Barnsteiner.
Thank you, Barb. And how wonderful to see all of you here today. Lots of familiar faces, and welcome to the people who are coming here for the first time. I can guarantee that you are going to have a fantastic experience here. I was thrilled to be asked to do this opening session, and one of the nice things about the opening session is you can kind of hopefully get people real excited about what's going to happen, but also the topic that I was given, the imperative to incorporate quality and safety. So I'm able to give my 2 cents worth of what I think is so important about this work. Okay. Now, what I did not do was figure out what button I'm going to push here. The green one. Great. Okay. We ran through the video clip, made sure that worked. Anyway, this is a slightly different remote than what I'm used to. Anyway, when we talk about an imperative, we're really talking about something that is of vital importance. And I'm really looking forward to reading the results of Jerry and Gail's study, because I think a tremendous amount has occurred over the last 10 or more years related to the whole QSEN initiative. But we still have so much work to do. Over the last 10 plus years, we did develop the competencies, all the knowledge, skills, and attitudes, got them disseminated through schools of nursing across the country. The fabulous website that continues to be populated with great resources for both people in practice as well as in academia. What's very exciting to me it's also diffused into accreditation standards for baccalaureate programs, DMP programs, through our accrediting agencies, and then this wonderful annual meeting that occurs. For another, hundreds and hundreds of faculty have been educated across the country, but as Jerry commented, still so many people aren't aware in academia they aren't familiar with the Institute of Medicine, aren't familiar with the QSEN competencies, And we obviously still have a tremendous amount that needs to be done. We have made progress in having QSEN standards built into curricula, textbooks. I recently, for another project I was involved in, did a citation search of some of our early work, our early publications. And that seminal article in 2007, Linda Cronowet and others, in terms of the pre-licensure standards and knowledge, skills, and attitudes, has now been cited in more than 600 articles around the world. It's so exciting to see some of the places in Singapore and Japan, Spain, Korea, in many different languages. And not just nursing. Our work has spread into all of the other health professions, medicine, PT, OT, radiology, so that the work that we've done has been diffusing out. More than 100,000 lives have been saved as a result of improvements in decreasing hospital-acquired infections. And so that's not insignificant. And one of the things that I would say is that I believe that nursing faculty in schools of nursing across the country are some of the most knowledgeable people related to the QSEN competencies than anyone else in the country. You came by your knowledge of the competencies as a complete whole, not just focusing on evidence-based practice or quality improvement strategies, but in integrating the competencies into your curricula. And I think it's very significant, and I'm going to challenge you on some opportunities that I think that you may have as a result of this in moving this initiative forward even more so. But obviously we haven't done enough. Errors in healthcare are now considered to be the third leading cause of death in the United States, which is, we should be much further ahead than we are. And while there are hundreds and hundreds of articles for us to draw upon on what to do in education, there's very little about what to do in actual clinical practice. We have a few examples, I've highlighted them here. Jerry's work on a clinical evaluation instrument. Mary Delansky and her colleagues have published quite a bit on the need for systems thinking in clinical settings. Gwen Sherwood and her colleagues have been doing a very nice job putting into the literature how to implement the QSEN competencies in specialty areas like infusion therapy, in nephrology nursing, and some of the specialty areas. So there are a few examples there. Most recently in April, Kathy Burke and colleagues, friends also, from the University of Pennsylvania Health System published a Delphi study on where clinical leaders, thought these knowledge, skills, and attitudes belonged in terms of frontline nurses in a clinical advancement system. And we were very heartened to find that clinical leaders think they belong early on. They believe that all of these KSAs primarily track to level 1 and level 2 in clinical advancement systems. So the work that we did with these pre-licensure competencies and the knowledge, skills, and attitudes, saying that this is where students needed to be facile on graduation, this is what clinical leaders are saying. People need to have these competencies early on in their practice. And we also know that the whole culture has to change. We can't keep doing the same old, same old. And it's similar to what we said as we moved forward in the implementation in education. When we began the QSEN work, I think we initially thought that if we tweaked a course or two, it was all going to be in place. And then we realized it needed to occur in a number of courses and get diffused across a curriculum. And then we realized that really curricula needed to be totally revamped. And so many schools successfully have been able to put this into place. And the same sort of thing needs to happen in clinical practice. So why aren't we further along? Well, Don Berwick would say that, first of all, too many other things take priority. And we think it's an either or, and it really needs to be a both and. We can focus on reimbursement. We can focus on job satisfaction. And we also have to be focused, laser focused, on the implementation of these competencies into everyday practice of every clinician. Sometimes on the front lines, there's an illusion of completeness. We think if we got our fall rate down, or our falls with injury, or we decreased our CLABSI rate, that we're doing terrific. And that checklist mentality isn't sufficient. CMS, while I think it was very wise of them to move into trying to improve quality and safety, has, on the other hand, made too many of us in clinical practice too focused on the metrics and not looking at all the system changes that need to take place. And we really don't have system literacy across with all of our clinicians. We have a lot of barriers in place. First, I think too many nurses believe that they're already practicing using the competencies. They believe they're giving patient and family-centered care. But when you begin to drill down and talk about patient engagement and what kind of activation strategies they use and how they personalize care, it quickly is apparent that we're not practicing by this competency with the knowledge, skills, and attitudes. This is, I've spoken, some of you may have heard me in the past talk about this particular article, many of them are out there, around sacred cows and evidence-based practice. And this group published in Critical Care Nurse, I believe, did a national survey, thousands of nurses, and whether people believed that these practices were true and false. And I'm not going to have you all raise your hands on this, but I can tell you that I did a talk for about 400 nurses a couple weeks ago where I did ask these questions, and the findings are very similar to what we found in 2015. Red is the correct answer, and that here we had 51% of people only who believe that putting someone in a Trendelenburg position is effective in preventing shock. And we still have almost a third of nurses who believe that an accurate check of an NG tube placement is to auscultate, put in air and listen and see. So that's a third of nurses. That evidence, that research, dozens and dozens of studies have been out for more than 25 years. The same thing of people putting normal saline into before you do endotracheal suctioning. That research has been out for about 30 years, but there's still far too many nurses who believe that that is an effective strategy. And again, far too many are still practicing using very outdated methods. And as I said, I regularly say, people don't come for care wanting to be taken care of by the standards of 10 or 15 years ago. They expect that every person who touches them is confident and competent, that they're practicing with the latest standards. They don't say, take care of me with the standards you used on fall prevention 10 years ago. They're expecting that you're using the latest evidence, and everybody, all frontline people are using the latest evidence. So, but where do nurses get their evidence? And these studies, about every 5 years, somebody does a national survey around where do nurses get their evidence. They do the same thing for medicine. But we find that far too many nurses do not stay up to date with the literature. Or, in this case, Third of the nurses, more than a third who were surveyed, believe that they don't have permission to put the latest evidence into place. So we have to think about what kind of environments do we have in practice. Byrne Melnick did a study that was published a year ago on CNOs and what their knowledge and support was of evidence-based practice. And while this was a small sample size, it also fits with previous studies that have been done in that 60% of the CNOs who responded to this survey believed that evidence-based practice was not being practiced in their organization, or only somewhat, which is concerning. And over 70% of them said that they were not putting resources into place in terms of facilitating evidence-based practice. So this presents a picture for us of all the work that we need to be doing. And as Dwan Dish says, do we really value evidence-based practice as frontline clinicians, as CNOs, or are we evidence-based only when we happen to like the evidence? It kind of fits with this opinion that we have. What's truth and what's opinion? A nice study that was published in the American Journal of Nursing by a couple of nurses out of Michigan did a 115-year, that's how long AJN had been published, since 1900, but they had done a 115-year survey of all the articles that had been published, and then did an analysis of all the articles that had something to do with safety. And what they found, we've been talking and writing articles since 1900 about the importance of hand hygiene. And yet, how many of us think, oh, we're 75%. Our data tells us on our units we're doing 75%. Isn't that great? No, if you're among the 25% who were recipients of a clinician who laid hands on you who hadn't done hand hygiene. We've been talking about the issues related to interruptions around medication preparation and administration, writing about that since 1930. And we know how unsafe that is. And yet, how many educators are still working with their students who are going to do med administration, and as the students drawing up the meds or preparing says, okay, why are you giving this medication? What is the dosage that you should be giving? What are the side effects of the medication? Interrupting, changing the thought process of the person who's doing this. And what are we doing as we observe some of these practices in clinical settings of saying, that's dangerous. This is a setup for someone making an error. But anyway, we've been writing about some of these things for a really, really long time. This isn't new evidence that we need to be putting into practice. When we talk about person and family-centered care, family together and person and family-centered care, we've been writing about this, doing research on this, with great good outcomes related to when you have family member presence, even in the ICU. And in fact, the Joint Commission requires 24/7 access by family members to their loved ones across any site of care. And yet, in a study that was published not that long ago, 2014, where they looked at the researchers in this study looked at care providers, nurses, and physicians, and what their attitudes were to family presence in the intensive care unit. Family members, for the most part, said how important it was that they were able to have access and that their loved one knew that they hadn't been abandoned and that someone was with them. And nurses were very mixed. Some knew how important this is, that patients have their family members with them, and they shouldn't be denied the opportunity. On the other hand, overwhelmingly, nurses talked about, in this study, If I'm going to spend an hour talking to the patient's family, then that's an hour that I'm not giving care to the person. So it's an either or. Or we make them look good. We clean them up, put their hands on pillows, and bring the family in, and then they think everything's just fine. So they're real comfortable then leaving. Again, seeing it as an either or and not a both and. Physicians, equally mixed. 24-hour visitation is not preferred. It's not possible, says one doc. Another one talks about how integral it is, and another one talks, not unlike many of the nurses who responded in this, my duty is to the patient and not the patient's family. So again, how we visualize this, how we integrate that competency of person and family-centered care speaks to the whole atmosphere related to these competencies. Choosing evidence-based care and quality and safety is not, the deficiencies aren't unique to nursing. Physicians, when you look at just one example, minimally invasive surgery, the evidence is overwhelming that the use of it, less pain, shorter hospital stays, fewer complications, quicker return to work. So why isn't it universally being practiced where it's been refined and there's great evidence that it needs to be put into place? Well, physicians say some aren't aware of it. Some don't know how to do it. They haven't stayed current. They don't believe the studies that give us all of these outcomes. Or there are a number of them who say, it's not as much fun, minimally invasive surgery. I like doing that, opening up the patient and getting in there doing the surgery. Well, it's not about fun. It's about what's best for patients and families. So I've begun to think that one of the things that we haven't talked about around quality and safety is the notion that we need to talk about related to willful blindness. And this is a conscious avoidance, a choice not to know about or to not act on something. And we're all familiar with this idea of willful blindness. The Enron crisis, the Catholic Church willfully not looking, willful blindness related to the sexual abuse of children for decades and decades. The United States torturing prisoners in the Middle East, again, looking away and choosing not to pay attention. But we also, as nurses, have often had a blind eye. Patient advocacy has taken a back seat to the politics or convenience. It's easier not to challenge someone. It's easier to accept the status quo. It's easier not to say to our colleague next to us, you know what, you didn't do that hand hygiene before you, maybe you want to step back and wash your hands. It's easier not to confront all of the evidence around 12-hour shifts that say you shouldn't be working more than 3 in a row. We do need to take our breaks, that while maybe in your hospital or healthcare agency you can only do 3 over a period of time, why are you working a second job and then you leave the 1-3 12-hour shift and go to the next organization? Not saying something about what the evidence has to say about how unsafe that practice is willful blindness. And these all go into our culture of quality and safety. So we've been, despite all the work that we've done, the IOM came out 2001 with the need for us to for every clinician to be practicing using these competencies. We're moving at glacial speed. So what do we need to do to make QSEN work in clinical practice? Well, first of all, we need many more studies that show how it can work. And when I talk about we need some intervention studies, we need some models about how this can work, not just one competency at a time, but really looking at the whole system, looking at all 6 of these competencies, and how feasibly can we put this into practice. We need a fair and just culture throughout our healthcare organizations, and by the way, in all of our schools of nursing. The work that Joanne Dish and I did on fair and just culture in schools of nursing will be in a 2-part series in the American Journal of Nursing, October and November, so that's coming out. And Joanne and I had the opportunity to spend a number of days recently with the Washington State Nurses Association, where we did some QSEN workshops, but also they do a great thing out in Washington, where in conjunction or in combination with their Washington State Nurses Association meeting, where they had about 400 people attending, they also have one day hooked up with that, which is their student nurse, Washington State Student Nurses Association meeting. And so we also had the opportunity to meet with over 200 student nurses. And we were thrilled when we started out asking the students, anybody here ever heard of QSEN? More than 80% of the students raised their hands. So that was obviously good work is occurring in Washington. But when we talked about a fair and just culture and what it was, the body language that we could see in the audience, where they all but were slapping their knees and falling out of their chairs laughing at the way we described the kind of environment we need to have in schools of nursing and clinical settings, was evident that we still have work to do in that area. We need security, safety in reporting of near misses, vulnerabilities, errors that take place. And we need a commitment by leaders and individual nurses. So we're thinking that when we talk about quality and safety and these competencies, that they're really an interlocking piece. I had the occasion recently to read Bruce Springsteen's autobiography, which, by the way, is a very good read. But he talked about how he's quite a wild man, as some of you may know, and he talked about how he and his wife, Patty, got to develop their relationship, and how it was, they were both quite the characters and had quite the personalities, but how they were able to develop their relationship was that they really figured out how to fit their personalities together in such a way that it was so supportive that it locked in, that you couldn't, with any pressure, pull the 2 of them apart. And if you've ever seen that game, it was like a little finger thing that you put your finger in, that if you try to pull it out, it stays stuck. That's exactly how we need to think about these 6 competencies, that they are interrelated. And you can't think about one without thinking about all 6 of them together. So there's a connection between those competencies. They map extremely well to the magnet standards. They also happen to map very well to the Joint Commission standards and the National Patient Safety Goals, the NCLEX exam. And as Mary Delansky has written eloquently about over the years, and other colleagues also, but we have to think about individual system, individual care and system care together when we think of putting these competencies into place. So I'm now going to show you a short video that I think demonstrates some of the work that we've been talking about.
Vid länssjukhuset Ryhov i Jönköping har det funnits en självdialysenhet sedan flera år. Men i våras invigdes en ny paviljong med 12 platser, 8 fler än tidigare. Just nu är det 14 patienter och de nyttjar platserna enligt ett schema.
Ibland kommer jag klockan 6 Och då öppnar jag med kort och då är jag helt själv här. För att personalen börjar inte från klockan 7. Och vi som har kort, det är vi som sköter oss helt själva.
Paviljongen kom ju till nu i april har vi invigt det. Och tidigare har vi försökt att få att dialysen ska utvidgas. Men så har det inte funnits pengar och resurser. Och då känner man, nej, inte nu igen. Men nu när det här är klart så känns det som att det var rätt timing. För det är nu vi har börjat mer tänka självdialys, att de flesta ska kunna det. Innan var det nog att det hade blivit som en vanlig dialys och så har man kanske tagit ett hörn.
Det första jag gör när jag kommer på morgonen är att jag startar maskinen så att den gör sitt självtest. Sen tar jag min vagn och går ut och hämtar mina grejer. Efter det så börjar jag klä maskinen och sätter dit slangar och filter och lite annat. 20 minuter för att bli färdigt allt sammans innan jag kan börja sticka nålarna. Jag sköter alla momenten från början till slut helt själv. Själva dialysen tar ju 4 timmar när jag är kopplad i maskinen. Sen ska man koppla innan och man ska städa efteråt. Ja, 25 timmar i veckan ungefär.
Normalt så styr ju dialysen livet, för du har måndag, onsdag, fredag kanske klockan och så är det det. Men vi skulle vilja att livet styr dialysen. Så att om du behöver lämna barnen eller du behöver hämta dem eller du jobbar så ska du komma efter där. För du måste ha dialys. Men du kan försöka få det att anpassas till dagen som du har det.
Hemdialys är ju inget alternativ för mig. För att jag bor i hyreslägenhet och har lite utrymmesbrist. Jag är ju här 4 dagar i veckan och trivs jättebra här. I väntan på att få en njure då så funkar det här jättebra. Som sagt var, man får ju många nya vänner också. Så.
Det är inte bara kanske att köra sin dialys utan du måste veta lite också vad det innebär. Jag vill gärna att man förhoppningsvis lär dem lite och hur man tänker. Och det känner man att de gör. Och sen börjar de, om jag gör så här. Och då känner man, ja, det är ju det man vill. Att de ska känna som att de är medverkan, inte bara i maskinen utan att det ger att de är i hela sin situation.
Läkaren kommer och sjuksköterskan kommer som du har då, så diskuterar man tillsammans hur man ska lösa problemen. Och det är ju bättre, det är ingen som pratar över huvudet på en här, utan här är man helt insatt i vad som ska hända. Och jag kanske har idéer hur jag tycker och de har idéer hur de tycker, och så löser vi det tillsammans. Och det är en fördel. I och med att sjukdomen tar ju ganska mycket del av mitt liv, så då är det bra att vara väl insatt.
Och just att vi jobbar ihop, det är så härligt. Jag tror när vi började med paviljongen, då var maskinerna var nya för oss också och för patienterna till exempel. Då var vi exakt i samma nivå. Vi satt med manualen båda. Och ingen var bättre än den andra och det var så här, och man kände lite hur de steg så att, och det tror jag är viktigt. Jag är ute en del och föreläser och då hör man liksom att varför lyckas ni så bra? Och det är för mycket vi har inte så många måsten. En del, du måste göra så här för att göra, till exempel du måste gå 4 dagar i veckan för att komma in på en självdialys. Och har du då gått 3 dagar i veckan, tycker det är mycket, då backar man. Men så är det tvärtom, de kanske var vana vid 3 dagar i veckan och kom in hit och så mår man inte så jättebra. Nej, så man kan antingen öka tiden eller dagarna. Och så ser den och de andra säger, ja men vi gör 4 dagar, det är jättebra, vi mår mycket bättre efter det. Då har du ju någon i samma situation. Det är mycket lättare att ta åt sig det än att jag säger det. Alla tänker ju ekonomiskt och det gör ju även vi. Och det är ju det vi har gått ut med också, att det ska inte krävas så mycket personal. Vi tar mer insikt om förrådet, även med läkemedel. För normalt är det ju chefen som kommer att aj, nu ska vi spara och det ska inte gå åt några pengar. Jag tror det är bättre att om vi får den insikten. Och det är inte kompresser vi sparar på utan det är liksom sättet att tänka. Och då har ju även där patienter som kommer med små bra idéer. Tillsammans så blir vi starka. och kan utveckla vården kanske på ett helt annat sätt. Så om 10 år så ser det annorlunda ut för att vi har en patientmedverkan. Och den är fantastisk att följa.
Great. Imagine if we looked at our work that way, and it was a collaborative effort, and we all realized that together with these competencies, and we had people who were coming for care, who were all part of the team with us. They have 52% of I actually had the opportunity to be in Sweden and to visit this unit and meet with a number of the people who were on dialysis, as well as the physicians and nurses, and have conversation about this. It's exactly, and some of you may have been at other meetings where some of them have presented at National Patient Safety Foundation, IHI. I'm only aware of one institution in the United States that has taken this information and begun to put it into place related to dialysis population. And yet this has been out for any number of years. And so sort of what's been holding us back from moving forward? Their infection rate has significantly declined, their economy of effort, cost, all of that. There is a business legal quality case for doing innovations such as this, and it results in safer, higher quality care. We have the evidence in many cases to tell us what to do. We have to make sure that all of our colleagues are aware of the evidence, that we have clear guidelines that we're going to put this into place, and that we have leadership support for it, as well as the resources. And that means that we've got to have a different conversation with the deans, directors, chief nurses in the country related to how do we move this work forward. Because as Jerry said, it's not diffused 100% across schools of nursing. And we know for sure it's not at the front lines of practice of most clinicians in most healthcare settings in our country. So many of you may not remember this or even know that there ever was a show called If I Were Queen for a Day. But if I were queen for a day, this is what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the QSEN competencies as the framework for practice, that it was in position descriptions, that it's in clinical advancement programs, that it is in performance appraisals, that it's the framework of our work, that there's continuing education annually for all healthcare providers that addresses what are the latest findings, the latest evidence around all of these QSEN competencies. I'd like to see robust interprofessional work. This is not something that's a nice to do. It's mandatory that we have good communication, collaboration, interprofessional teamwork taking place. I'd like us to think about our reporting systems for vulnerabilities in care, for near misses, for errors that take place. That we have systems where patients and families can do the reporting, and not just the clinicians. Because I suspect we would know a lot more about the vulnerabilities in care if we incorporated patients and families in the reporting structure. I think we need to have a whole new way that we look at what are the occurrences that take place and that we combine. We need periodic review of medical records, healthcare records, to look at, specifically target looking at for particular errors that might have taken place. That would inform our work as much as the actual reports that take place, as well as what patients have to tell us about the quality of their care. We need more courageous leaders. We need people who will take off the blinders that they have on and decide that they're going to converse with their colleagues a little bit differently and move away from some of the willful blindness that has been a part of every day of our practices. We need all of this to actually help us to have a laser focus on the QSEN competencies. We need leadership that's willing to drive the frontline perceptions of a safety culture. I'm also, one of the things that I do is I'm a magnet appraiser. And some of you may have heard me talk about a particular organization that I was fortunate enough to be on the team for, where every single Friday morning from 8 to 12, the leadership made rounds. And they were not allowed, the executive team was not allowed to have any appointments. They weren't allowed to miss these executive rounds unless they had specific permission and a really good reason for not being there. And they fanned out across the whole entire organization, in dietary, environmental services, in every area where there were patients. And they talked to all the frontline staff. And they always started with one question: what's keeping you awake at night related to your job? What are you worrying about? And that led into hearing about what were the concerns about quality and safety. They didn't take on every single project. They weren't able to. Sometimes they say, we'll put that on a parking lot. But they did get back to every single person who raised a concern. People would come in on their day off on Friday morning because they could count on somebody being in their work area if they wanted to have an interaction with that person. That's a safety culture. Every single person in that organization could if you said, do you know who Tom is? They knew Tom was the CEO. And if you said, what's the name of the chief nurse here? Everybody knew it was Sally. Everybody across the organization knew who those people were. That is a culture of safety. That's transparency, that's trust, that's knowing that you could bring your concerns, and that's moving to where we need to be for high quality, safe care. So, on the other hand, one of the things that we haven't had very much conversation, we really have done a lot of focusing on our work related to system effectiveness, to the leadership, what we needed to have in terms of a quality and safe organization. But we also need to have conversation equally, it's a both and, nurses owning their practice. And what are our individual responsibilities? What are my responsibilities for how I stay current, how I stay competent? We know certification is very important in being able to demonstrate the knowledge about your particular specialty area. We have a responsibility to stay current and competent, and sometimes that means spending your own time needing to read, to stay on top of things, going to conferences and meetings. We need every single nurse to be involved with quality improvement, not just the QI council, but every single person. And we need to help our colleagues, starting with ourselves, giving courageous feedback to our colleagues. We need every single person coming to work fully rested and prepared for the work at hand, knowing what our limitations are and not hesitating to ask for help, collaborating effectively with colleagues from other disciplines, and doing our part to contribute to a healthy work environment. We still continue to get feedback about nurses eating their young. It makes me crazy. I was a brand new nurse and we were using that term. But nurses, new to practice nurses, still report that this is going on. It's not unusual. We all have worked with colleagues who, if someone's coming on to work, we're thrilled. We know it's going to be a great shift. We're all going to be working together. And we've worked with colleagues where you kind of groan and say, oh my gosh, there's going to be drama on the shift today. Well, again, why? We can't turn a blind eye to that. What are we doing to say we all are in this together and we need to have a healthy work environment, and we can't afford to be having 25% of our new to practice nurses leaving by the end of their first year? because this contributes to high-quality, safe patient care. We need to speed up what we do when there are threats to safety. And again, not turning a blind eye to some of this, but working with our leadership. One quick example that I'll give you is a number of years ago at the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania when I was there. The oncology nurses, the staff were trying to get some new positions, and they felt they really needed them. It went through the whole system, it was turned down, they didn't get it. Their unit shared governance group invited the CFO to make rounds on the unit. And they organized themselves so well that when the CFO came to make the rounds, they took her patient to patient and talked about what the care was, what was going on with this person, what the care requirements were, what they had to do, and it wasn't long before they got those positions. So, that they needed. And again, it's using some innovative strategies sometimes to move things forward and not just thinking it's the nurse manager's responsibility to make this happen. We're well aware of what we need our leaders to be doing to support care in terms of what's the mission, vision of the organization, and is it committed to, we say quality and safety, but what does that look like when it really hits the interface with our patients and families? Is there a visible presence of senior leaders throughout an organization and systems that encourage continuous improvement? When I was fortunate enough for many years to have my dean be Claire Fagan, and we used to talk about her, what that looks like in an academic setting. We used to talk about Claire walking the halls, and she would regularly walk around the entire School of Nursing, stopping in and out of faculty offices, first of all telling you how well you were keeping your office up, but she would chat with you, and she knew what was going on in that entire building. She walked the halls. You could have a conversation with her about anything. And again, that's what a culture looks like in an academic setting. It's not just in clinical setting. So we need to build some bridges between academia and practice. As I started out saying, I think faculty in schools of nursing today are some of the most knowledgeable people around quality and safety. Those of you who have been at this work for a number of years, putting this in your curricula, are also the people who could be building these bridges and taking your knowledge and your skills and your positive attitudes into the clinical settings and to help make some of this change happen. So over the next couple days, be thinking about what you personally can do and what are you willing to do to put the QSEN competencies at the forefront of care in our healthcare settings. So thank you.